The neon sign above Mason's diner flickered weakly, its red letters barely legible against the fading twilight. The glass windows, once a welcoming display of warmth and good food, were now smudged, clouding the view inside. The restaurant stood nearly empty, save for an elderly couple picking at their meals near the window. Gordon Ramsay stepped out of his car, adjusting his jacket as he took in the sight before him. He had seen struggling restaurants before, but something about this place already felt forgotten. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. Pushing open the door, the scent of stale grease and something burnt hit him immediately. He scanned the room. A young waitress leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging him. Then, clang! From the kitchen, a loud crash erupted, followed by an exasperated voice. "What do you mean we're out of onions?" "We were out of onions yesterday," Gordon arched an eyebrow. Fantastic start. A moment later, the kitchen doors swung open, and out rushed Mason, a man in his late 50s with a frazzled expression and a grease-stained apron. His salt and pepper hair clung to his forehead, sweat beading along his brow. He stopped in his tracks the second he saw Gordon. His breath caught. "Oh, my God." His voice was barely above a whisper. "You're—" Gordon folded his arms, surveying the sad state of the diner. "Yes, I'm Gordon Ramsay," he said, his voice firm. "Now, tell me, what the hell is going on here?" The weight of the moment settled between them. For Mason, this wasn't just another customer walking through the door. This was the moment everything changed. Mason wiped his sweaty hands on his apron, but his voice failed him. Gordon took another glance around, cracked linoleum floors, peeling paint, and flickering lights. "Right," he muttered. "Before I even ask about the food, let's start with the basics. Are you actually serving meals in this dump?" Mason hesitated. We try." A loud crash from the kitchen made Gordon whip his head around. "Oh, for fuck's sake!" he growled, pushing through the swinging doors. The moment he stepped inside, his face twisted in disgust. The floor was slick with grease, dishes stacked in the sink, and the unmistakable stench of burnt food lingered in the air. A single young cook, dressed in a stained white shirt, scraped what looked like charred remains off a pan while a pot boiled over on the stove. Gordon took a slow breath. "What in the actual hell is this?" The young cook jolted, nearly dropping the pan. Mason rushed in behind Gordon. "This is Johnny, my nephew. He helps in the kitchen." Gordon turned to Johnny. "You have any idea what you're doing?" Johnny paled. I try." No. Let me answer for you," Gordon snapped. "You don't." His gaze swept across the kitchen. "Mason, how do you expect to run a restaurant like this?" Mason's shoulders sagged. "We've been struggling. No staff, no money. Gordon inhaled sharply. "Right, here's what we're going to do." He squared his shoulders. "I'll help fix this. But I need to know, are you actually willing to listen?" Mason hesitated, then nodded. "Good," Gordon said, his voice dropping slightly. "Because, right now, Mason, this place isn't just struggling. It's dying." The words hit hard. For the first time, Mason saw it for what it really was. He wasn't just running a failing restaurant. He was losing everything. The kitchen was eerily quiet now. Mason stood at the counter, sleeves rolled up, gripping a chef's knife with tense fingers. Across from him, Gordon Ramsay leaned in, arms crossed. "All right, Gordon said. "If you want to save this place, we start now. Show me one dish that actually represents what you can cook." Mason's hands trembled slightly as he turned to the fridge, pulling out ingredients. He set them down, took a deep breath, and began chopping. His movements were hesitant, but there was something there. Muscle memory. The pan sizzled as onions, and garlic hit the heat, releasing an aroma that cut through the kitchen's usual staleness. Tomatoes, basil, and fresh herbs followed. Mason's hands weren't as steady as they used to be, but there was still a rhythm, a glimpse of the chef he once was. Gordon watched closely. After a few minutes, Mason plated a rustic spaghetti pomodoro, topping it with fresh parmesan and a drizzle of olive oil. He hesitated before sliding the plate forward. "This was my mother's recipe. It's what inspired me to become a chef." Gordon twirled a bite onto his fork, his face unreadable as he took a bite. The moment the flavors hit, his expression shifted. He chewed slowly, thoughtfully. Then, he set the fork down and looked at Mason. "This," he exhaled. "This is bloody good." Mason's chest rose slightly, as if a weight had lifted. Gordon leaned forward. "So tell me, Mason, why the hell aren't you serving this?" Mason swallowed hard. "I guess I lost confidence, started cutting corners, forgot why I started." Gordon's voice softened just a little. "Well, let's remember. Right here, right now." The kitchen wasn't just a disaster zone anymore. It was a starting point, and for the first time in years, Mason felt something he thought he had lost. Hope. The scent of simmering tomatoes, garlic, and fresh bread filled the kitchen. The chaos was gone. In its place was precision, purpose. Mason stood at the stove, stirring his signature sauce. He adjusted the seasoning without hesitation. Behind him, Gordon Ramsay watched, arms crossed. "Now that," Gordon said, "is the work of a real chef." Mason peered into the dining area. The restaurant, once lifeless, now buzzed with energy. Customers scanned the new menu, excited for something real. A waiter rushed back. "Table 5 says it's the best pasta they've had in years." Mason exhaled deeply. Gordon clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Told you. People will always crave real food. And you, Mason? You're a real chef." As Gordon grabbed his coat, Mason turned. "I don't know how to thank you," Gordon smirked. "Don't thank me, just don't screw it up again." With that, he stepped into the night, the neon sign above glowing brighter than before. Inside, Mason stood at the pass, calling out orders. His kitchen was alive again. His dream was alive again. And this was only the beginning. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you.